Okay, so today I wanted to do a little more off the cuff, a little less scripted of a video for this kind of a Halloweeny themed video. Yeah, I feel like that's kind of the content that I enjoy when watching speed CAS or build videos. I like listening to people just kind of talk about what's on their mind, so I figured I'd also do that. This is actually It actually also allows me to talk a little bit about what I'm doing in the video. So this is like an older sim that I made. I'm trying to think of a few years back at this point. He's based off the band Ghost, and I just kind of wanted to redo him because I felt like he didn't really fit my style anymore, or he just didn't have the look I wanted him to. Like maybe back then he kind of fit what I was going for, but just not anymore. So I gave him kind of a slight makeover to fit more so what I wanted. He's gonna end up probably in my, what is it? What's the vampire world in The Sims 4? Moonlight Hollow, I think. So he's gonna end up there, and you'll see later in the video I built him a church. He's now also a little inspired by Midnight Mass, which is a fantastic, very darkly beautiful Netflix series. And I just really wanted something that kind of it mimicked that feel of like the darker aspect of religion, especially of Catholicism, mixed in with, the vibes of the band Ghost, where it's like a satanic cult kind of thing. I just really wanted that kind of feel to it. But yeah, so enjoy that bit. But I also really wanted to talk about alternative fashion and mainstream misunderstandings of alternative fashions, because this is something that's been on my mind for a while. As somebody who dressed alternatively, I feel like I have a little bit of a say in how I feel about it. As somebody, who takes part, I feel like I should speak my mind on it. And the way I felt about it was kind of revamped when I was watching Brittany Broski's and what's her name? Brittany Broski and Sarah Showers. Their Violating Community Guidelines podcast. I really like this podcast. I like how it's formatted. I think that it's interesting. I like that they're able to have those scripted moments and then have those funny moments come from the seriousness of some of the topics. And I just think it's very entertaining. But I do think that when, like, the whole format of the podcast, it really lends to them talking about things that they don't know anything about. And I feel like that was especially highlighted in their video from September 19th about e-boys and e-girls. This video is a little less about e-boys and e-girls because I'm not an e-girl, and I don't really care. But they do talk about the fashion and sub-styles that kind of came before and influenced the E-style. And I feel like they just have a lot of, especially Brittany, has a lot of misunderstandings and misconceptions about those styles. And I just kind of wanted to talk about it for any like younger person who might be getting into these styles, or for people who don't know and they just see this and they just go off of what these celebs say, what they think they know about the styles. And this is mainly about Britney because she talks about Lolita style in the video, and that's kind of mainly what I wanted to talk about. They do talk about goth, and I think the important thing to remember about goth is that, like punk, it is inherently music based. It would be weird if, like, you saw a punk person who was a like super into like pop, like to be a punk you have to have the politics of punk and to listen to punk. And there's a lot of subcultures like that. Punk came from, I know it's like mostly associated with England and London specifically, back in like the 70s, but it started in New York, and it was just kind of like very DIY, do it yourself, learn the instruments. You don't have to be good at the instruments, you just have to play. And that was like the whole thing, to be like it was a counterculture. You don't have to be good at the instrument, just play it. And that's where punk comes from. And then from punk came goth, but goth has its own music, its own clubs, like the Batcave, basically a whole different scene. People consider themselves different from the punks, right? Just like grunge doesn't consider themselves the same as a punk, They're separate, they have their own music. You can like music from other like subcultures or from the mainstream, but you do have to like the music that is part of that subculture to be considered that. And I feel like a lot of modern aesthetics doesn't have that musical influence. Like they talked about cores in the video, and cores is like really just like aesthetically pleasing. Like, what do you find aesthetically pleasing, or what do you identify with? Like crowcore or goblin core, or they talk about pirate core. Any of those cores, it's really just kind of like the feeling, like what kind of vibes do you like, what kind of vibes do you want to give off, basically. And I feel like that's a lot of like where the misunderstandings kind of come from, because there are other communities like that people just really don't understand, like the Lolita community. Because Lolita, in the video, Britney says that Lolita fashion is meant to be for men to look at and men to enjoy, and it's meant to like kind of mimic like a pedophilic kind of interest. And that's just not true. If you know anything about Lolita fashion, you're probably like, what? Like, no, that's not what it's about. It's a very modest fashion. It prides itself on modesty, and kind of a very old-fashioned modesty. You have to be very covered. You have to wear bloomers. You have to wear petticoats. You have to wear either like stockings or socks that cover your ankles. It's very much, you have to cover yourself. It's based on a very old-fashioned modesty and hyper femininity. And I would hope that Britney, as a fan of drag, would maybe be able to realize that it is, like a lot of other subcultures, it is an expression of like something that is very kind of tried to put down by society. Like femininity is not embraced as much as, say, like masculinity is. It is something that girls are teased about, that they're not allowed to express, that they're called, names for trying to express. It's very difficult to see that kind of misunderstanding be spread to a large amount of people, because their podcast does get a lot of views, and I'm sure it does get a lot of listeners on other platforms. So it's just one of those things where, like, I wish that things like that weren't talked about without knowing anything about it. Also, the fact that Lolita fashion is also practiced by a lot of men. In fact, a lot of men were very large and influential in the Lolita fashion movement. And I don't mean in like the substyle like Ouija. I mean like actually like wearing the dresses, performing that like very, very feminine look. It used to be called Brolita, but I know that they don't like being called that anymore. It's just, they're just Lolitas as well. And I think that that's easy to overlook from like an outsider, because like maybe you just see like pictures and you don't realize that these are like also men, you know? They're doing it to like express a part of themselves that they feel like they maybe not able to express just in normal clothes. But that was like kind of like my main beef. But you know, as somebody who dresses goth, they also talked a lot about goth fashion, and it very, very fitting for this build. I know. And I think it's, you know, like Sarah, when they were doing the core test and she saw goth core and she's like, oh, is that where goth got its like name? Did they just like drop the core? And no, that's not how goth got its name. The core is like I said earlier, like a very like new, it's a very new internet phenomena. And I feel like we kind of, people outside of like alternative fashions kind of forget how these fashions tend to evolve, especially in like online spaces. It's very easy to forget or ignore. And yeah, that's, I don't really know what else to say about it. I feel like I could definitely do a more like in-depth video about like each and every sub style and fashion, because each one has like a culture and a style that is so unique and comes about for different reasons. And there are plenty of like very good YouTubers who do more of the Japanese fashion side of things that I think would definitely be able to better talk about it, because I'm not, I would consider myself more goth. I listen to goth music. I dress more goth. So I can't really talk about like the more of the Japanese subcultures, but there are like so many, and they're all like so interesting and fascinating. And I kind of feel bad for people who, you know, have to fight against these misconceptions and misunderstandings about their fashion, because they are a lot less mainstream than things like goth, which is weird to say, but like everybody kind of, you know, knows about goth at this point. But I feel like Japanese alternative fashion, street styles are still very, very misunderstood. And it doesn't really help when people who don't know what they're talking about talk about it, you know? And it's fine, like, when people talk about it in a way where they want to learn more, but just kind of being like, oh, it's, you know, the people are doing it for like the male gaze, especially when they talk about in the video. I'm back to the podcast episode where they talk about bimbo core, and they're like, oh, bimbo core slays, or whatever Brittany said, you know. I love bimbo core. I do think it slays, but I think it comes from like the same idea as Lolita fashion comes from. It is very, very feminine. It's like that overly feminine look, you know. It's like the over performance of femininity, just like drag does. It's like a counterculture going against certain ideals, you know, reclaiming that femininity that they feel like was denied to them or that they can't express normally, and just being like, fuck it, I'm going to dress and act the way I want, the way that I want to express who I am as a feminine presenting person. And I do think it kind of sucks and very, demeaning to people to just act like they're doing it for, male attention. When people don't understand things, they tend to just base their opinions off of the things what they do know, and they try a lot of times to talk about things in a way that is more understanding. But if you like bimbo core, but you're like, I draw the line at Lolita, I don't know. a little bit of a strange opinion to have. Editing Lindsay here, and I would like to say that Lolita, the fashion, and nymphette and coquette fashion are not interchangeable. Nymphette and coquette have similar origins, but Lolita is completely different. I just want to, because I think that when Brittany is talking about Lolita fashion, what she thinks Lolita fashion is like Lolita fashion the book, when in fact Lolita the book and movie fashion is from a completely different place. Lolita is just a name that they gave to the fashion, and they didn't really think about, they just wanted like a cute name for it, and they thought Lolita was a cute name. Nothing to do with the book, nothing to do with the movie, and that's an often misconception. I just wanted to put that out there. Back to older me. And I wish that was kind of just more understood or even talked about in the video, but like I said, they don't really do much research besides the document that they're given at the, before the episode. So I don't super blame them for not understanding. It's like when like mainstream tabloids talk about like goth celebrities, and it's just like celebrities who wear a lot of black. It's very much that like mainstream understanding of what what the subcultures are. You can't change that now. It's alternative fashion is so visible to the public now, especially with TikTok. It's kind of hard to avoid misinformation unless you get it directly from a person who identifies and is in that subculture. And even then, people are always going to have differing opinions. But I do like that they talked about that the fact that a lot of subcultures have political leanings, and that's very important to remember, I think. But yeah. Other than that, like, unless you want me to talk more about maybe in the future more subcultures and like their rise, or just you're interested in them, maybe you want like goth music recommendations, I don't know, I'd be willing to do something like that. But yeah, I guess I'll talk more about the build since I'm doing this, I'm recording this as I'm watching it. This side house was like for the clergy members. I really wanted to do this basement idea when I originally, this is kind of like a rebuild of a different building. I wanted it to be like a mausoleum, and then, the vampire guy would sleep down in the mausoleum at night. But I thought, if he wants to pretend to be human and not fully let people know, he would have a little more of a way to hide that. And I liked the idea of, a basement that is underneath the graveyard that he could sleep in. There are a few things that I didn't film myself doing in this build that I did after I stopped recording, because I noticed a few things, like the back wall of the church. I missed a foundation swatch. I did end up putting that on, and then I also ended up adding some ivy because some parts of the building just looked too bare, and I wanted to give it maybe a little more of an overgrown quality. So you'll see that, but at this point I'm just kind of landscaping. Yeah. I've thought about like maybe doing videos where I just have like, music and just kind of letting the build go. But I don't want to deal with community, the claim system. It's a really, really bad system. Like, I forget what video it is, but one of my past videos, the outro music that I always use got claimed for some reason. I guess because it sounded too much like a different song. It's not even like the song that I used, but it just sounded like the song. And so a company who it didn't belong to claimed it, which, like, I don't get money from these, but it does stop your videos from performing basically at all in the algorithm, especially since I am like a channel that is very small, you know? This is just me talking. And they claimed it, and now like I'm never gonna get views ever again because of it. It's just really a pain to find royalty free music that nobody will claim. But yeah, that's just a thing that YouTube has to deal with, and there's nothing really creators can do about it. I wish there was, but again, it is what it is. But I hope you've enjoyed just kind of watching me build. I really enjoyed building this. I had fun. I thought it was like a fun, a little Halloween idea. If you want it, it's on my gallery. But yeah, I guess I'll find royalty-free music to just kind of end this off on, because I really don't have much more to say about it. Alright, talk to you all later. Hope you have a great day. Bye!